Good morning. Kate here, bringing you this week's Monday mission, and this is number 50. I can't even believe this is the 50th mission we're doing together. So whether you've been with me from the beginning or you hopped on at a certain number, thank you for showing up every week, for hearing me out, for putting into practice all the things that we talk about, the action steps that I give to manage your mind and start healing and gaining back your power, reclaiming your life, right? So I want to thank you for showing up every week and showing up for yourself. So I had put on Instagram some different question boxes and topics to have you vote on and share with me what's coming up with you. And you guys gave some great topics and things to talk about. So this one's going to be a little bit longer, right? Because every 10 missions, remember, I do a you asked, I answered. So this is number 50. It's the fifth one I'm doing, where I take questions or topics that you really want to learn more about, questions that you need answered, and put that all into one video and share that for this week's mission. So every 10th mission. So this is number 50. It's going to be a little bit longer, but it's going to be worth it. So again, like I said, you guys gave some great topics. So one of the ones that had come up for you is dealing with narcissists. Okay, so I want to start out by, I'll explain what even a narcissist is, right? What are some of the characteristics that you might see with somebody that could be considered a narcissist? And then we'll talk about what to do, right? We'll give some action steps, some things that we can do to handle our interactions with someone that may be a narcissist, okay? So a narcissist is, I think, becoming a word that we throw around a lot, recently, in describing people that, we have difficulty with. Now, I'm not minimizing what it's like to deal with a narcissist by any means. But I do also think that just as humans, we can all demonstrate some characteristics or traits that could be considered narcissistic. And so I just want to explain that there's a spectrum, right? As with most things. And so even though someone is showing some characteristics, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're diagnosed, right, with a narcissistic personality disorder, which is a mental health diagnosis that would be given by a psychiatrist and would, involve mental health treatment, right? So a narcissist, kind of the characteristics that are in the DSM, which is what defines mental health and personality disorders, would be someone that lacks empathy. So they have a lack of empathy. They have a need for excessive admiration and attention. They need to be the best. They need to be the most right about everything. And they will manipulate and control in order for those things to happen, right? To get what they want. They will blame and deflect. Okay, so there's a very much a lack of ownership over their own choices and actions. And they don't realize that their thoughts create their feelings, right? So they're constantly blaming anything that happens on factors outside of them, people outside of them, right? It's always someone else's fault or some other reason that this happened, right? It's not because of them or their choices, right? The reason that I explain all this is because I think some of us, when we hear the word narcissist, we think of someone who is extremely self-absorbed, right? Someone that thinks they are just amazing and they should have all of these accolades, and right, which can be part of it. But what I want to offer is that someone gets to that point because of a lot of difficulty in their childhood, right? I'm not saying that anyone that is diagnosed as a narcissist specifically has childhood trauma. There are way too many variables and factors to recognize there, right? That I wouldn't know for that particular person. But a person does not get to that place where they have a lack of empathy, they blame everyone around them and take no ownership, they manipulate and control, right? They don't get there by having healthy attachments in their childhood, right, with other people and relationships and appropriate emotional stability and regulation, and right. So the reason I say that is because that always kind of helps me to show and have at least a little bit of compassion for someone that may be showing these traits. And I know you're like, Kate, but you don't know this person that I'm thinking of, right? And I know. Again, I'm not minimizing how difficult it is to interact with someone that has these traits, but if you can understand how they got there, or think, in your mind, someone doesn't get to this place as a grown up, right, without having some difficulties or challenges, or, like I said, kind of instability or unhealthy attachments growing up. Okay. It doesn't excuse anything that they do, but it does help us maybe understand why they got there, right? So, that being said, what can we do about it, right? So, the first part is trying to understand how they got there, show some compassion there. Again, not excuse anything that they do or say or how they treat you, but recognizing that it got there because of an unhealthy development, right? And then the biggest thing to do with a narcissist or someone that has a lot of narcissistic traits is to set concrete, strong boundaries, very strong boundaries, right? That are communicated, that what the boundary is, right? And again, remember, boundaries are not something that we put in place to test somebody, right? I'm going to put this boundary in place, and if you cross it, that means you're out of my life, right? That's not what a boundary is. A boundary is for you to know what you will tolerate, right? What is healthy for you to tolerate, okay? And then communicating that to the other person, that that's what the boundary is. And then the hardest part of a boundary is knowing what you're going to do when they cross it, because they will cross that boundary, especially someone that has narcissistic traits, because there is a lack of empathy, that even if you've communicated this boundary, they're not going to recognize that, right? Because it is very self-centered in that they sort of think that everyone thinks like them, and they can't possibly see why you wouldn't, right? Even if you explain this boundary perfectly, they're not going to understand it or see why it's there, right? So you want to get out of that need to justify your boundary, and rather just set it, make it clear, and then know what you're going to do when it's tested, right? When that boundary is crossed, okay? The other thing to do, this is dealing with anybody, but especially in dealing with someone that may have narcissistic traits, is to have a really strong sense of self, okay? And what I mean by that is making sure that you're not tying your worth to their behavior, okay? So regardless of what they say or what they do, because remember, they are going to manipulate, control, do whatever they can to get things to go the way that they want it to go. And if that means blaming you, putting you down, being condescending to you, insulting you, not respecting your boundaries, right? They're going to do those things. But if you tie your worth to those behaviors and actions, you're really going to have a difficult time separating yourself and not feeling just beaten up all day long, right? So a strong sense of self here, and what I mean by that is you're not tying your worth, or if it's at work, your professionalism or your productivity or your skill, right? If it's in a relationship, your deserving of love, making sure you're not tying that to this person's words or actions. Okay. And then another really great strategy, something you want to have in place, is a really strong support system, right? So people in your life that do not have narcissistic traits, have empathy, can understand what you're going through, and you can share what you're experiencing, and they validate that experience for you, right? Because someone that is showing these traits of narcissism are going to possibly do something that we call gaslighting, which you may have heard that word before. And that really is denying someone's reality, right? So you come to them and say, my feelings were really hurt when you said this. And there's a complete denial that I didn't say that. Right? There's a complete denial that you even experienced what you just shared with them, right? So having a support system with people that are like, yeah, no, that happened, and you're not crazy. This is how this person reacted to you, right? So someone to kind of share that experience and validate your feelings, acknowledge that your reality is true, right? This did happen, is going to be really helpful, having that support system. And then the last one I wanted to share is just do not expect them to change, right? Or to see your point of view, right? There's no amount of explaining or saying it in a different way that's going to get someone with these traits to have empathy for you or to understand your point of view. And there is nothing that you can say or do to get them to change, right? I'm not saying that someone that has these traits cannot change. They absolutely can if they start to recognize it in themselves that they have these traits and want to work through them in therapy or whatever is the route that's best for them to do that in. But it's, they have to realize that there's a problem and that they want to change, right? If that's not there, they're not going to change and they're not going to just be able to have empathy and see your point of view. Okay, so I hope that helps. If you have further questions or like specific situations, please reach out, let me know, send me a message, shoot me an email. You can just reply to this email and I can maybe help you process it a little bit more, knowing some specifics, but that's like my spiel for narcissists. Okay. All right. So the next issue that came up or topic to discuss is holding on to resentment. Okay. And I'm going to actually just read to you from Brene Brown because she is the queen of emotions and emotion research. So in her book, Atlas of the Heart, her newest book, okay, she does have a section about resentment. So this book, if you want to grab it, she goes through, I think it's either 85 or 87 different emotions and the research on them. So really incredible book. But the one about resentment, I'm just going to read to you here, okay? While resentment is definitely an emotion, I normally recognize it by a familiar thought pattern. What mean and critical thing am I rehearsing saying to this person? So that is her signpost, right? That is her red flag that, oh, I'm thinking about these horrible things that I want to say to this person. That's a sign to me that I'm holding on to some resentment, right? And so she goes on to say that resentment is the feeling of frustration, judgment, anger, better than, and or hidden envy related to perceived unfairness or injustice. Okay? So I think a lot of us, me included, when you hear the word resentment, you think that it's a result of anger, right? I'm just so angry that so and so has not done this thing that now I resent them for it, right? Or I am so angry that so and so continues to do this thing that now I resent them. Okay, that's really what she's not saying that here. So it's an emotion that we often experience when we fail to set boundaries or ask for what we need, or when expectations let us down because they were based on things we can't control, like what other people think, what they feel, or how they're going to react. Okay, so what she's saying is that resentment can be a result of not setting boundaries, and it can be a result of our own expectations being let down because those expectations included being able to control someone else's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, right? So she gives this example. One of hers is that she when she's kind of always busy and doing something and productive, right? And so when someone else is maybe taking time to relax on the couch or take a longer lunch at work, she feels resentment towards this person, right? Does that sound familiar? So you're cooking dinner and putting dishes in the dishwasher and helping your youngest with their homework and filling out the calendar for what's going on next, and your partner is sitting on the couch, right? Or your older kids still haven't done the chores that you asked them to do, right? And that leads to resentment. We think it's because we're angry that they haven't done what they're supposed to do, right? But what it really comes from, what she says, it's not a lack of work that's making me resentful. It's not your lack of work that is making me resentful. It's my lack of rest that is making me resentful. right? So what she's saying is that I'm not resentful because you're not doing your work. I'm resentful because I want to sit on the couch, right? I don't want to have to do these 8,000 things right now. I want to be able to do what you asked me to do when I feel like it and not do it right away, right? So can you see how it kind of stems from envy rather than from anger, which is kind of what we always think resentment is from. So I hope this is making sense. Uh, and I think just with everything you've in all my videos, I think I've said this, but all of our feelings are data, right? So when you are feeling resentment, asking yourself, what could I be envious of, right? What do I envy about the person that I'm feeling resentful, right? And in that situation, it's envying that they're resting, right? So that's not a sign that you need to control them and make them rest less. It's a sign that you need to provide more rest for yourself. Okay, so it's a red flag. It's a sign, right? You use it as data. All right, so that is those are my comments on resentment. Next one was body image. So negative self-talk around your body. This is a big one for me, and one I've really, really had to work on and still work on to this day. But what I can say here is the biggest skill to develop is around negative thoughts about your body and your body image the biggest skill is to be aware of the thoughts, right? So first you have to think about your thinking, right? You have to even know what the thoughts that you're having are. What are those things? What are those sentences that you're saying to yourself, right? What are the negative sentences that you're saying about your body image? Then you have to interrupt that cycle, right? And you can do that two ways. You can either say, I'm not thinking about this right now, and move on to something else, distract yourself, right? And in the beginning, that might be all you're capable of doing is to just, oh, I see those thoughts. I'm noticing them. I'm moving on to something else, right? Now, I don't recommend that all the time because eventually we do need to feel our feelings so that we don't keep shoving them down and then they pop up in other places, right? So I don't mean ignoring them, but I mean recognizing that you're going down a not productive path, right? A path of negative self talk that's going to just leave you feeling horrible, and choosing to not go down that path, right? And to do something else in that moment. The other way to respond is to challenge the thought and then practice a new thought. Okay. So if your thought is, I'm so disgusting, how do we challenge that with, well, why would you say that? No one's ever told you that you're disgusting. So why do you think that? Well, I see people on Instagram and they're a lot thinner than I am. Okay. Right. And then you can see that's where that influence is coming from, right? You're being told by social media that you should look a certain way. You're interpreting that to mean that because you don't look that way that you're disgusting, right? So it's just the idea of challenging the thought. Is it true? Right? Nope, no one's ever said that to me. Right? What's making me think that way? Oh, well, I'm not this, and these messages that I receive or what I see everyone else doing is telling me that. And then you can kind of break those thoughts down and then practice a new thought. Okay, so remember how the brain works, right? Our sledding hills. When we have a thought a couple times, right? The more we have it, the faster it becomes, the more automatic the brain makes it. It makes it as automatic as brushing your teeth. And it's a sledding hill in your brain, right? So that those negative self-talk, negative self-thoughts about your body are automatic at this point. They're your default, right? And you'll notice this even if you've lost weight before or gained weight before, you will see that the thoughts don't change, right? That shows you that they're automatic. They're sledding hills, right? So I was, at a point where after my second baby, I lost 60 pounds. 60 pounds, right? You would think those thoughts would change, and they didn't. The thoughts were still there. They were my default, right? They were my sledding hill, okay? But what's amazing is that our brain can create a new sledding hill, but it takes practice. It takes that repetition, right? Just as much as we did for the first one, right? As many times as we said the first sledding hill, I'm disgusting, I'm disgusting, I'm disgusting, we have to say the new thought. The key here is not trying to pretend that the thought, I love my body, or, I'm gorgeous, right? Trying to think the exact opposite of what you think now and believe now is not going to work, right? That's sort of like that toxic positivity. It's forcing yourself to say something that you don't believe, and your brain's going to be like, nope, not happening. So you may have to just go to a neutral thought at first and just say, I have a body, right? I have a body. That's true. It's neutral. It's not good or bad, right? And your brain can believe that. And then you can get to another thought. Some other thoughts that I have that help me are, this body gave me life. Or, I'm sorry, this body gave life, right? If you're a mom, I have 2 boys, I can say that, and that's believable, right? This body gave life. I've also run an Army 10 miler. So I can say something like, this body ran 10 miles, right? Anything that helps you see the amazingness of your body and who you are, right? So this body ran 10 miles. This is where you really have to start showing yourself compassion. And that's hard. It's a hard practice to do, especially if for so long you have not shown yourself that compassion. One of the ways you can do that is going back to the younger you that started to have these thoughts, right? So for me, I went on my first diet when I was in 3rd grade. I was 9 years old. And I thought that I needed to lose weight. I don't remember if like someone in my class was, doing that. I don't know where it came from, but that's where it started. So sometimes I will even go back. I can see her on the playground, on the blacktop at recess, telling her friends that she was going to go on a diet. And I can talk to her and show her that compassion and just say, you didn't deserve that. You were 9. You were 9. And you're beautiful and amazing the way you are, right? Sometimes it's easier to talk to the younger version of ourselves than to look in the mirror and say it, right? But you can get there. It's just going to take repetition, right? So that is my advice around body image and negative self-talk. And the other thing I tell myself too is that none of my accomplishments in life, right? My degree, becoming a life coach and working with clients, having my boys, none of my accomplishments have had anything to do with the size of my body. Not one. Not one thing, right? When I would tell people the things that make me who I am, none of them have anything to do with the size of my jeans, right? So I just remind myself that. Okay, and the last one that came up was, I thought this was awesome to share with you guys. What is the difference between therapy and coaching and seeing a life coach, right? And so I am someone that I've been in therapy since high school, maybe middle school. No, high school, I think. High school off and on, right? And so therapy is really focused on diagnostic measures, right? And finding a diagnosis, mental health diagnosis, and then treating that diagnosis, whether it's with cognitive behavioral therapy or other type of therapies, okay? And it really can be focused on the past, maybe how this mental health issue that you're having developed, processing trauma, if you are someone that experienced trauma. That's really where therapy comes into play, right? It's kind of more diagnostic and then treating whatever that diagnosis is. Coaching is not diagnostic, right? So it's not therapy. It would not be giving you a mental health diagnosis. What it would be doing is asking you amazing questions to show you your brain, right? I will literally show you your thoughts, your patterns, and teach you about your brain, why it does what it does, why those patterns are there, why those thoughts are there, and how to change them, right? And so step by step teaching you how to show up for yourself and manage your mind around any problem that you might be having. And then through the coaching relationship, that skill is transferred to you to where you are then coaching yourself, right? And being able to manage your mind and reclaim your life, right? So, in my opinion, coaching is just much more action oriented and future focused. And we absolutely talk about the past and how that got you to where you are, right? And the thoughts that you have are based on that, but it's very focused on what are the next steps that we can do, how can we manage our mind now, and then how can you transfer, how can I transfer that skill to you to where you're doing it for yourself and showing up for yourself. All right, so These were awesome questions. I know this is longer, but I hope it was worth it. If anything came up for you, any questions you have from this, from what I talked about in this video, please reach out, share with me. And I'll be kind of talking about all of these topics on Instagram this week too. So you can see some different perspectives other than what I brought up today. So I hope you have a great week. No journal prompt, not really a mission, just a lot of sharing information, and then, keep that conversation going and reach out to me with whatever comes up for you. All right. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.